Once upon a time, a half-girl was born in a village at the edge of the world. Initially, everybody loved the half-girl, passed her from hip to hip, fed her, cherished her, and said "Oochie Goochie Goo" to the half-baby girl. But as the years went by, the half-girl started screaming so much. Nobody can quite remember why she screamed. Perhaps it was because the other villagers didn't want to look at her anymore. Perhaps it was because she didn't quite feel complete. After some more years of screaming and increasing isolation, the half-girl decided one night that she would leave that village, never to return to that wretched place. She waited for the fires to die down and for the dogs of the village to go to sleep, the very same dogs who had competed with the half-girl through the years for scraps of food. So when everything was quiet, everyone was asleep, including the dogs, the half-girl started hopping out of that village. She crossed the border of the village into the outside world for the very first time. She entered the deep forest next to the village. It was a full moon night, and every so often the full moon would light up this brand new path in front of the half-girl. The full moon would shine through the dense forest roof as she hopped and she hopped without stopping throughout that night. She hopped and she hopped without stopping. An owl hooted. A jackal called from afar as she hopped and she hopped non-stop throughout that night. Then it became lighter as day approached. Birdsong returned to the forest as the birds announced the coming day. And then, like a flapjack popping from a toaster, the sun rose from behind the horizon, and the half-girl found herself stranded on a riverbank before a deep, dark, coffee-colored river. This coffee-colored river flowed with such majesty that it would rumble the earth. The half-girl didn't know what to do. She couldn't swim. She looked around in a slight panic, looked for something to do, looked for help, looked for a plan, and then along the riverbank she saw another person approaching. So naturally the half-girl hopped closer to that other person, and as that other person came within eye-shot of the half-girl saw that it was another half-girl. So these two half-girls hopped closer to each other, and then they stood right in front of each other in momentary silence. Surprisingly, the two half-girls started to fight with such an intensity that the birds became quiet due to the fighting and the screaming and the hissing and the occasional biting. The fighting of these two half-girls was so intense, they landed into the river, first the shallow part of the river, and steam rose from the water. So intense was their fighting, and they went deeper and deeper into this coffee-colored river. These two half-girls, as they kept on fighting, seemingly not noticing the water as they went deeper and deeper, and then they disappeared under the surface of the deep, dark, coffee-colored river, which returned to its previous state of majestic flow and the earth rumbling due to this majestic river. And then, from the depths of this deep, dark, coffee-colored river came a dripping, wet, confused whole girl who stood on the riverbank on 2 feet for the first time in her life. And as most humans do, she put one foot in front of the other and started walking. Moments later, she started jogging for the first time, and then she broke into a run. She ran like the wind for the first time in her life. Half of her, or she had half an idea of a certain village, and she tried to go in that direction, although she didn't have the full picture in her mind. She ran and she ran like the wind without stopping throughout that day. And just before nightfall, she stopped on the borders of a certain village. And there was an old man with a long beard sitting on the stump of a cut-down tree trunk. He sat with his 1 foot inside the boundary and his 1 foot outside the boundary of the village. He looked up, he said, "Good evening to you, young lady." She said, "Please help me. I'm so confused." The old man said, "Why are you confused?" She said, "I don't know where I am. I don't know where I am." He said, "You want me to tell you where you are?" She said, "Yes, please help me." He said, "I'll tell you where you are. You're right back where you started. And ever since you left, the people stopped dancing. Ever since you left, the people stopped singing. Ever since you left, the people stopped feasting. So what do you say? I get up, we take hands, and we walk to the village square to see what happens." And so it happened. He stood up, put his 1 foot that was outside of the borders, inside of the borders. He had 2 feet inside of the borders of the town for the first time in a while. And hand in hand, the old man and the whole girl walked to the village square. Now you know how it is in small villages, right? By the time they reach the village square, the elders, the working adults, the kids, the dogs, the goat, the sheep, the chickens, the geese were all there curiously rubbernecking to see what was going on with the old man and the whole girl. And naturally, the villagers lit the fires. The drums came out. The music instruments came out. The singing started. The dancing started. The feasting started. They sang, they danced, they feasted until late that night. And just before the end of the party, which was possibly something like the return of the girl, just before the end of that party, from the tall trees next to the village square, a half boy was observing the goings on. He had resolved earlier that day that he would leave the village that night, never to return to that wretched place.